Welcome back to Business Strategy 450. This is week 5. I just wanted to remind you, you've probably already seen this in the emails, but to let you know that I'm not going to be including the weekly recap out on YouTube and in BStrat 450 network that I've done in the last couple of weeks. The general viewership on that has been limited, and so I figured it wasn't adding a lot of value, and the amount of time that goes into producing it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So from now on, I will be using email, my blog, and certainly this lecture to recap concepts that are important and to keep everybody on track. If you have any questions about those weekly recaps, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to proceed on the assumption that nobody will miss that one 4 or 5 minute video. Let's go over the agenda for this week. First, I'm going to cover the mid-semester course evaluation and feedback, the survey that is now posted under Surveys in Manhattan. I'm going to talk just briefly about it, but I'd very much appreciate it if everyone participated in that survey. I'm going to do a very quick recap of the strategic management process and where we stand up to this point in the semester in terms of reviewing the strategic management process, both in the context of the course, but also in the context of the book, the primary book. And then I'm going to be covering competitive rivalry and dynamics. We're going to talk a bit about competition generally, how to do competitive analysis. We're going to talk about competitive actions that companies take, factors that drive those actions, and we're going to talk about competitive dynamics in various market cycles. And finally, I'm going to spend a little time reviewing some of the work we did on Blue Ocean Strategy last week, and really put it in the context of a counterpoint to competition, as competition is laid out in this week's lecture and as it's laid out in the book. That's going to be a recurring theme in the course as we continue on. The idea that competition is one way of looking at strategic planning and strategic analysis, but there are alternatives, and certainly the Blue Ocean Strategy concept that rather than fighting in red oceans, fighting competition head on head, but trying to create new markets, new blue oceans, has really a lot of merit and something we should be considering and looking at as an alternative, and an alternative that I'd like to see you incorporate into your analysis, both in all of our online discussions, but in the materials that you'll be preparing for the remainder of the semester, including the team project, the final exam, and any other written assignments. Now let's get to the mid-semester course evaluation and survey, which I did release out on BStrat 457 network. I released it a few hours ago. I'm preparing this lecture on Sunday afternoon, so Sunday morning it was posted in the survey section of Manhattan. Please go there and prepare it. The picture over here on the right actually is a screenshot of the actual survey. It's designed to get two types of feedback. One, how are things going for you in terms of the course, and the other is what can we do to enhance the class going forward. I recognize that this is earlier than mid-semester, at least in a technical sense. The reason I'm doing that is if I waited until the true mid-semester, I wouldn't really be in a position to incorporate your feedback into any enhancements this semester. It would have really been too late to adapt the course to the extent that it's feasible to do so. I can't guarantee that I'll make enhancements or adaptations this semester, even with feedback at this point, but certainly it gives me a bit more runway to consider some of the suggestions I hope you'll provide. And in my mind, the suggestions you provide will be part of the discussion that we started in the second week regarding the evaluation of this course from a strategic perspective. There will be future discussion forums on the feedback you provide, and I'm going to try to frame some of those discussion forums in the context of enhancements that are really tied to the strategic management process that we've talked about, how we would apply the strategic management process using your feedback to improve the course. But in the interest of keeping things moving quickly, and if there are enhancements that I can adopt more quickly, I'd like to be able to see the feedback now and see what I can do in shorter order. Please complete the questionnaire. It's the best vehicle I have to get feedback and to make enhancements, so I'd appreciate your taking the time to fill it out. You need to submit your feedback by February 20th at 10 p.m. One bit of disclosure: unlike the year-end formal evaluation, which is submitted to the dean's office and is part of sort of my evaluation as a faculty member, I will see the results right away. When you do a year-end evaluation, I don't see those until after grades are submitted. So I hope you'll be honest. I hope you'll be open. I hope you understand that I'm looking for honest and open feedback. But in the interest of full disclosure, I wanted you to be aware that I will see these survey results, and you can act accordingly. But I just wanted you to be aware so that you wouldn't be surprised that I am going to see the results. That's sort of an obvious statement, I guess, on one level, since it's necessary for me to see the results in order to incorporate feedback into the class, which, as I said, that's a primary reason I'm doing the survey in the first place, but I just wanted to give you that disclosure. All right, let's turn to the recap for the strategic management process. As I've said a number of times in the class, and certainly right from the beginning, I've indicated that the strategic management process, which is laid out in the textbook and which I've described a couple of times, is the backbone of the course. It is the outline of the course. A couple of you have given me calls or asked to set up calls, and I've spent some time talking about this and have reminded you that if you look at the way that the lectures are organized and the course in general, you always have to kind of come back to the strategic management process. And since we're a few weeks in, just wanted to take a few minutes just to kind of remind ourselves where we stood in that process. So we're going to kind of describe where have we been. And as you may recall, at the beginning we talked a bit about vision and mission, which in this chart is the red box. That was the starting point in terms of our analysis. But again, to remind everybody, the strategic management process is really a cycle. So wherever you start in this cycle, you'll notice that the arrows keep kind of pointing back in a clockwise fashion and get you back to vision and mission. So vision and mission isn't necessarily something you design on day one and forget about. It is something that should get adapted as you get additional feedback through the loop of the strategic management process. We then talked about the external environment and the internal environment as two sets of inputs that are used to build the vision and mission. So again, on this loop, although we started our discussion at vision and mission, we then recognized that in order to build a vision and mission, you needed to understand the external environment, which is the green box up on top, and that was Chapter 2. And the internal organization. What are the capabilities of the internal organization, the strategic competencies of the organization, and that those two sets of factors are used for you to frame up the vision and mission. We then talked a bit about the first stage of strategy formulation, which is business level strategy. That's the first of the 6 boxes under strategy formulation. That was Chapter 4. That was also our week 4. And is where we've begun to kind of branch out and think about both a kind of competitive analysis and the question of blue ocean strategies, the concept that as we formulate strategy and as we build our business level strategy, are we limited only to a competitively oriented model, or are there other ways to think about it? Namely, could, instead of fighting against competition and evaluating ourselves in the context of competition, can we look outside of those red oceans and focus on blue oceans where there are new markets, new opportunities that make competition irrelevant? So that's the beginning of this sort of two sides of the debate that we will continue throughout the semester. This week, and then in that context, we compared sort of the two frameworks, Porter's 5 Forces, which is a truly competitive-oriented analysis, as you know, and then Blue Ocean Strategy, which is the alternative. What are we doing today? Well, today we're focusing on Chapter 5, which is competition-based, but It talks about competitive rivalry and dynamics, as I said at the outset of this lecture. But we will be thinking about Blue Ocean Strategy as a counterpoint to the notion of competitive rivalry and dynamics. And then where does that take us, or where do we go from here? We're going to continue in the area of strategy formulation. We're going to finish out the 6 purple boxes. We're going to look at corporate level strategy, which is sort of broader strategies at the organizational level. Then we're going to look at M&A and cooperative strategies. I see, again, Chapter 7 and Chapter 9 as being collectively related topics, and so I'm going to approach the discussion that week from that perspective. Then we're going to get into international strategies, and those are all different ways to formulate strategy. And once we get out of the purple boxes and the different elements of formation of strategy, we'll talk a little bit about strategy implementation. And again, I'm not going to go through all the boxes at this stage, but that becomes really the end point for the course, or the last major module of the course. Then we're going to talk a little bit all along the way as we move through the process. So think of strategy implementation as being sort of the last phase of the class, but in each of the phases we'll continue to talk about feedback, outcomes, actions, and inputs, which are the connective tissue that bring the cycle back up to the external and internal inputs. And so those factors, those elements will be woven into the discussions, have been to some degree up to this point, but will continue to be woven into the discussion as we proceed. And so it goes. Again, it is a cycle. Once we go through that feedback and we evaluate what works, what doesn't, we get to the point that we change some of the inputs, which might cause our vision and mission to be revised, which means we rethink some of the strategy that we formulated, we implement slightly different strategies, and we continue the cycle onward.